I asked Brianna, who always acted tough and spoke freely, something that had been on my mind for a while. Why are you trying so hard? Brianna's eyes widened slightly at my question. I'm not trying hard at anything. This is just who I am. I smiled faintly. But you're hiding your true self, aren't you? I can tell. My words made Brianna uneasy. Deep inside, I was sure she was just a sweet girl. I couldn't help but wonder what had made her this way. I wanted to know more about her. My name is Dave, and I'm 30 years old. I graduated from a university in Boston and stayed there to work. But my relatives kept telling me how lonely my single father seemed every time I visited home. Eventually, I decided to move back to my hometown and got a new job at a small surveying company. It's only been a few months since I started working there, but I think it's a nice, close-knit workplace. The company even holds regular drinking parties. Participation is optional, and no one looks down on you if you don't join, but I try to attend as often as I can. I believe it's important to nurture relationships in settings like that. Today, there's another drinking party scheduled, this time to celebrate the completion of a project. After finishing my work, I was tidying up in the office when the sliding door opened with a bang, and a woman's voice echoed through the room. "Hey, old man. Here's the documents you asked for." I found myself gaping at her, utterly stunned. Her appearance and the way she spoke were completely mismatched. She had jet black hair in a short pixie cut, a small face, and large almond-shaped eyes that seemed almost too big for her face. Her tall, slender figure was striking. She was the very definition of a stunning beauty. Yet, hearing such rough words come out of her mouth was disorienting. The man she was addressing, Zachary, our company president, looked nothing like someone who'd be called old man in such a casual tone. He was a polished and refined gentleman, meticulous in his work, and always kind and approachable. Zachary began walking out from the back of the office, replying, "Thank you," but before he could approach her, the woman disappeared out the door. Zachary let out a deep sigh, something he rarely did. Noticing my confusion, a colleague filled me in. Apparently, the president's daughter has quite the bold personality. She played soccer with the boys in middle school, joined a high school rock band as a guitarist alongside her male classmates, and after getting her motorcycle license in college, she spent her weekends cruising around on her bike. "What's so wrong about that?" I asked. My colleague hurriedly shook his head. And no, I didn't mean anything was wrong with that. But he had said it, hadn't he? His hushed, disparaging tone seemed to disapprove of her lifestyle. Still, I didn't let my thoughts show. "You seem to know a lot about her," I said. "I learned that she used to work here, as an office clerk here, but quit because she got fed up with the president pestering everyone with 'please, marry my daughter.' Honestly, I could understand why she would leave." I felt a pang of sympathy for her. That night, at the drinking party, I found myself completely stunned. The president, Zachary, was drunk and rambling. This was my first time seeing him like this, but for my senior colleagues, it was just another occurrence, the one they hadn't seen in a while. Apparently, he gets like this whenever he's tired or troubled. "It's because Brianna was here today," one of them muttered. At the mention of her name, Zachary, who had been slumped over the table, suddenly shot up. "Someone, please marry that tomboy daughter of mine," he shouted out of nowhere. While the colleagues around me awkwardly avoided his gaze, I raised my hand. "How about me?" I said boldly. My colleagues exchanged worried glances, clearly thinking I was making a mistake. But Zachary stared at me intently. You, he said, squinting. You've somehow become everyone's favorite around here. I grinned. That's right. Thanks to my seniors, I enjoy working here every day. I said it loud enough to liven up the atmosphere. Zachary hesitated for a moment before shaking his head. No, I will not allow it. Why not? You've been complimenting me a lot lately, said I'm thoughtful, didn't you? I protested, pretending to pout. Zachary chuckled. You're just too smooth, too flaky, that's why. I dramatically slumped, and everyone burst into laughter. That's so unfair. I'm the most sincere guy you'll ever meet, I exclaimed, which only made everyone laugh harder. To my surprise, my colleagues started defending me. Dave's a good guy, they said. Probably, they were just trying to ensure the honor didn't fall on them. Riding this wave of support, I kept making exaggerated appeals. Finally, Zachary sighed. Fine, fine. Dave, why don't you meet her once and see how it goes? I wasn't sure if Zachary's words at the drinking party were just drunken rambling or a polite gesture, but to my surprise, he had given my contact information to Brianna that very night. The next day, I received a message from her. It began with an apology. Sorry about my dad, followed by a suggestion to figure out a date for our meeting. I was shocked. Would someone really go on a date with a man they barely knew, just because their father told them to? Judging by her lifestyle, she didn't seem to have any reservations about dealing with men, but as someone who wanted to be seen as more than just another guy, I felt a little conflicted. Her short pixie cut suited her small, striking face perfectly. Her slender, toned figure was impossible to forget. Ever since I'd seen her that day, Brianna's image had been etched into my mind. Even just recalling her face made my heart race. Is this what they call love at first sight? Winning the right to a date with her during the drinking party felt like a huge opportunity. I wasn't going to let it slip away, so I began meticulously planning the perfect date. Finally, the day arrived. We agreed to meet near the downtown train station. It was a lively area, so I thought about suggesting a movie or a visit to the arcade. Considering her bold personality, maybe the batting cages would be a good idea. There was also an amusement park a little farther away, reachable by a free shuttle bus. As I stood there running through various plans in my head, the loud roar of a motorcycle engine suddenly caught my attention. I turned to look and saw a slender figure skillfully maneuvering a large bike in a sleek riding suit. Whoa, that's cool, I murmured, almost involuntarily. The bike headed straight toward me and came to an abrupt, precise stop right in front of me. The rider then removed their helmet. I gasped. It was her, Brianna, the same woman I'd glimpsed at the office, the president's daughter. Hi, I stammered, trying to introduce myself despite being caught completely off guard. But she cut me off with a nod of her chin, signaling me to get on the bike. What? I asked, confused. She shot me a sharp glare and said bluntly, if you're not getting on, I'm leaving. Is this really okay? Getting on a bike with her meant I'd be holding onto her, practically clinging to her body. Still, I didn't have much time to think about it. She seemed entirely serious, already putting her helmet back on, as if ready to take off without me. I'll ride, I exclaimed, raising my hand in panic. She stared at me silently for a moment before handing me a spare helmet. Here, she said curtly. I fumbled with the helmet, finally getting it on, and said, this is a cool bike. Excuse me. As I climbed on, in moments like this, it's better not to act shy. Without hesitation, I wrapped my arms around her waist. She didn't hesitate either. Hold on tight, she said. And with that, the bike roared to life. The motorcycle sped off toward the mountains, carefully staying within the speed limit. It was my first time riding a bike, and at first, I felt a jolt of fear every time we leaned into a curve. But soon, I started to enjoy the ride. Sure, it felt a little embarrassing to be riding behind a woman, but her driving was so exhilarating that I forgot all about it. Eventually, the bike glided smoothly into the parking lot of a restaurant. "We're here," she said, hopping off. I got off the bike and removed my helmet. "This is," I muttered. It was unmistakably a steakhouse. It seemed to be situated halfway up the mountain. The lone steakhouse stood quietly in its remote location, yet the parking lot was filled with cars and motorcycles. Apparently, despite being in such an out-of-the-way place, it was a popular spot. Without waiting for me or saying anything, Brianna walked straight into the restaurant. I hurried to follow her inside. The menu offered only one main dish, steak. There were a few side dishes available, but Brianna didn't ask me what I'd like. Instead, she confidently ordered the steak on her own. As soon as the steak was brought to the table, Brianna eagerly started eating. And then she said just one thing: delicious. From the moment I met her, every word she said had been bold and full of energy. I couldn't help but smile at her enthusiasm as I took a bite of my steak. "Wow, this is amazing." Brianna flashed a satisfied grin. "Right? Told you it's good," she said, finishing her steak in record time. I also finished my meal shortly after, and together, we left the restaurant. As we stepped outside, she stretched in the parking lot, and I finally saw an opportunity to ask her something that had been on my mind. "Why are you trying so hard?" I asked, summoning my courage. Her eyes widened slightly. I'm not trying hard at anything. This is just who I am." I smiled faintly. "But you're hiding your true self, aren't you? I can see it." I glanced around and then gestured toward the distance. "There's a rest area just up ahead, isn't there? Would you mind listening to my story there for a bit?" Brianna hesitated but then gave a small nod. We both put our helmets back on and climbed onto the bike again. After about 5 minutes of riding, we arrived at a spacious rest area with a stunning view. We sat on a small bench, and I began to speak. "You know, I'm kind of the same. I mean, I've been pretending to be something I'm not," I said, glancing at her. Brianna turned to me, her expression focused. "My mom, she's always been sick," I admitted. "My mother had asthma. She often got sick and would sometimes end up hospitalized after a severe cold. My dad was busy with work, so whenever my mom was hospitalized, I'd be sent to live with relatives. As I got older, I'd often stay home alone, relying on neighbors to help out when needed. When I was first sent to live with my relatives, I expressed my feelings openly. I'd say I was lonely or that I wanted to go home. When I reacted that way, the adults around me would frown sympathetically and say, 'Poor thing, because your mother is always sick,' looking at me with pity. Once I realized what their looks meant, I stopped showing my sadness. Sure, I was lonely. I wanted to be at home with my mom, but I was never poor or pitiful. I loved my mother deeply, even though she wasn't healthy. It wasn't her fault that she had to be in and out of the hospital. It wasn't her fault that I was left alone. But if I showed my sadness, people would see me that way. So I learned to wear a mask of smiles, and I started observing people's expressions and actions. I'd wonder if the person delivering food to me was genuinely happy to help, or if they thought it was a bother. Even if it was a bother, I had no choice but to rely on them. How could I act to make sure they didn't feel burdened? What behavior would make them willingly prepare lunch for me during summer break without feeling obligated? Of course, my dad would hand over money for meals, and bow his head in gratitude. But money alone doesn't solve everything. No matter how much you pay, it won't work unless someone feels genuinely willing to help. By the time I was in elementary school, I had reached such a level of understanding. As I recounted my past, I sighed. I was a cunning little kid, wasn't I? But observing people was a survival skill, a way to make sure I wasn't disadvantaged or unhappy. And that habit hasn't left me. I'm constantly reading the expressions, gestures, and tones of the president, my colleagues, and my friends, always figuring out how to win people over. Brianna stared at me, her mouth slightly open. My dad said, Dave might seem smooth and shallow, but he's really good at getting people on his side. I chuckled wryly. That is the impression I've been giving. Some workplaces value seriousness and formality, but at this company, I figured a cheerful, slightly casual attitude would be more accepted. It's a friendly, family-like environment. Our president is serious and meticulous with his work, but he wants to interact with his employees casually. That's why the company occasionally holds drinking parties, but no one is pressured to attend. At those parties, we can all let loose and have fun together. In those situations, playing the clown makes the atmosphere even livelier. Not everything I do is a lie. Acting cheerful to ease the worries of my parents, relatives, and neighbors has become a part of me. But originally, I was a quiet, introverted child who would curl up in a corner of the room, longing for my mother. Hearing my story, Brianna sighed. That makes me wonder if even you don't really know who you are anymore. Her sharp observation struck me, and I froze. You might be right, I admitted. Brianna gave a small laugh. I had a twin brother, she said suddenly. Her unexpected words sent my mind racing. Neither the president nor my colleagues had ever mentioned a sibling, and she spoke about him in the past tense. I found myself instinctively watching her expressions and gestures, unsure of how to respond. Noticing this, Brianna chuckled softly. As you might have guessed, he passed away at the age of 12. Before I could figure out how to respond, Brianna continued her story. Born on the same day as fraternal twins, they were named Brianna and Ray. They grew up together, occasionally fighting, but overall thriving. Ray's heart condition was discovered when they were in 4th grade. He collapsed during soccer practice and was rushed to the hospital, where the diagnosis was made. Brianna smiled faintly. I didn't really understand what it meant for him to be sick. I thought he'd just get better after resting for a bit. What followed were endless cycles of home care and hospital stays. At first, Ray tried to remain cheerful, but over time, he started showing more and more signs of sadness, though only to Brianna. To their parents and others, Ray always put on a brave face. It's like he thought he couldn't hide anything from me because we were twins. But he didn't want our parents to know how sad he was. He didn't want them to feel worse than they already did. The defining moment came just after they started 6th grade. Ray couldn't attend a promotion ceremony and was confined to his hospital bed. Brianna visited him alone to bring the notebook he would have received at the ceremony. When she entered the room, his bed was empty. It wasn't unusual for Ray to wander the hospital when he was alone, taking short walks or sitting in the lounge. He usually returned within 30 minutes, so Brianna decided to wait in his room. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a notebook. It was peeking out from under the pillow, and I guessed that Ray must have hidden it there before leaving the room. Even though I knew it was meant to be private, I couldn't help myself. I reached for it. When I opened it, I found a list of things he wanted to do once he got better. Brianna said he wanted to play soccer again. He wanted to learn to play the guitar like his favorite rock star, and he wanted to attend a live performance by that rock band. When she mentioned the band's name, I was stunned. I know them. I'm a fan too, I said instinctively. Brianna's eyes widened. No way. They're an indie band with a real niche following. How do you even know about them? Smiling, I eagerly explained. They performed at a live house in my hometown once. I was in middle school back then, so I couldn't go because it was a 21 and over event. But the poster was so striking. Brianna's lips trembled. What was on the poster? I don't remember the images, but in big, bold letters, it said, "When life feels meaningless, live with everything you've got." My mom had just passed away at the time, and I was in a dark place. Seeing that poster gave me strength. I decided to live with everything I had. Suddenly, Brianna let out a choked sob. I panicked. Wait, did I say something wrong? She shook her head repeatedly, tears streaming down her face. No, that phrase. It's the most famous lyric from one of their songs. To Ray, that phrase meant everything to him. I see. That's how it was. That lyric came from their signature song. Ray knew it even before I did. It turned out that Ray had discovered the band through their dad's collection. During his recovery at home, he was bored out of my mind. So he wandered into his dad's room and started going through his collection of manga and CDs. To my surprise, I discovered that the serious CEO I had always known was a fan of rock music. People really are full of surprises. At first, Ray couldn't stand the loudness of the rock music, but by the time he finished listening to one CD, he found himself drawn to its energy and cool sound. When he read the lyrics more carefully, one line struck a deep chord with him. When life feels meaningless, live with all your might. At that moment, battling a sudden illness and feeling like giving up on life, it felt as though those words were spoken directly to him. He decided to write down everything he wanted to achieve if he ever overcame his illness. I was engrossed in reading through his notebook when Ray came back to the room and scolded me. But then, as if releasing everything he had been holding in, he told me how much those lyrics had saved him. He started watching interviews and videos of the band, and even began dreaming about riding a motorcycle. Suddenly, it all clicked. Brianna's oversized motorcycle, which didn't seem to suit her frame, was the same brand as the one the band's lead vocalist rode. So, Brianna, you're riding motorcycles, playing the guitar, and even playing soccer. All for Ray. When I asked, she gave a faint smile. You're quick to catch on. That's exactly right. But it's a secret from our parents. Ray made me promise not to tell them about his dreams. He didn't want them to know he had unfinished business in this world. He wanted them to think he left with a smile, so he made me promise never to tell them he cried. Hearing her words, I felt tears welling up in my eyes. It was hard to believe these were the thoughts of an 11-year-old. He seemed wise beyond her years. But then I realized how much I saw myself in Ray. I, too, had hidden my true feelings deep inside and forced a smile. At the time, I called him an idiot and told him to just get better and make all his dreams come true. But by winter, he was. By then, Ray had grown weaker and handed the notebook to Brianna. He must have realized his time was running out. Believing he could no longer fulfill the list himself, he entrusted it to Brianna. We're twins, you know. One soul split into two bodies. So I told him, come back into my body and use my body to do everything you wanted to do. I'll make it happen for you, even though we're not identical twins. I know it sounds foolish. I couldn't stop the tears from streaming down my face. She had spent her life fulfilling the dreams her brother could no longer chase. Even though she couldn't play in official matches, Brianna joined the boys' soccer team and poured her heart into it. In high school, she formed a band with the boys and played the guitar. She even got her license to ride a heavy motorcycle, all of it, for her brother. It was an incredible display of sibling love. But I had to ask, what about the things you want to do, Brianna? She smiled softly at my question. Since the moment I felt like Ray became a part of me, I haven't really thought about what I want. I placed a hand on my chest. There has to be something. Listen to your heart. You care about Ray so much that your own wishes are just hidden deep inside. I could see it in her gestures and expressions. There was something there. Following my advice, Brianna blushed slightly. Did you find it? The thing you want to do? When I asked, Brianna turned bright red and pouted. I don't know. I can't figure that out all of a sudden. Her shy reaction made me laugh without thinking. Take your time. You could even start by sharing those thoughts with me, just me, if that feels easier, I said gently, and she hesitated. Would it bother you to stick around? I mean, I don't want some sugar-coated answer. I need to know your real feelings to feel at ease. She seemed cautious, probably because I had opened up about my quirks earlier. From the bottom of my heart, I'd like to stay by your side. Actually, I want to date you. It'd be amazing to connect with you, Brianna, the girl I fell for at first sight. That's the truth, I confessed smoothly, and Brianna's face turned beet red as she exclaimed. Shallow, my dad warned me. He told me to be careful around you. How could I convince her I was being genuine? Inside, my heart raced, but I managed to keep it hidden. Blushing, flustered, and fumbling through the moment, we both ended up a mess. Still, I smiled calmly and watched her as she fidgeted in embarrassment. And then, a few years later, are you really going? Brianna stood tense, her nerves clear in her stance. Of course I'm going. I got the tickets, didn't I? It'll be fine. Everyone there is nicer than you think. I firmly held her hand, pulling her along as she hesitated. Today, Brianna and I were finally going to see that rock band live, the same band that inspired both Ray and me. But the fans, they're all guys, and they looked kinda intimidating. I shook my head and said, don't judge people by their appearance. My words silenced her, and she frowned slightly. Ray's dream list. This is the only thing left, isn't it? When I pressed her, she pouted again. Years ago, Brianna had planned to attend the band's concert in Boston to fulfill Ray's wish. She bought the ticket and intended to go alone. But when she arrived, she was overwhelmed by the sight of passionate fans. They were all dressed in elaborate costumes that showcased their love for the band. And there wasn't a single woman in sight, or at least none that she could spot. Overcome with nerves, Brianna couldn't bring herself to enter the venue. It became a traumatic memory for her. Once we're inside, you'll definitely see other women there. This is their first show in Boston in 20 years. You can't miss this chance. Let's go. I tugged her hand firmly, but she still resisted. But, is it okay to dress like this? Shouldn't I be wearing something more rock-like, like them? I looked straight at her. Today, Brianna wore her black bobbed hair loose, pairing jeans and a casual shirt with cute earrings and a matching necklace. You look great, I said. She puffed out her cheeks in playful frustration. That's not what I meant. I couldn't help but laugh. There's no dress code for a concert. You'll enjoy it no matter what you wear. Come on, let's go already. With that, I took her hand and led her up the narrow, dimly lit staircase to the concert venue. At the entrance, we showed our tickets and stepped inside. Thanks to Brianna's earlier hesitation, the venue was already packed. Standing room only. It seemed we'd have to settle for a spot in the back. Then one of the fans approached us. Hey, a couple, huh? I'm a regular here, Let's enjoy it together. The man was dressed like the band's lead vocalist, complete with makeup and an outfit to match. Brianna flinched slightly, her shoulders trembling. I flashed him a big smile. We're married, longtime fans, and finally got to come to a concert. It's a dream come true, I said enthusiastically. Hearing that, the man beamed with excitement. He noticed the photo Brianna was holding and pointed at it. I answered immediately. It's her late brother. He loved this band too, so we thought it'd be special to experience this together. The man grabbed my hand and shouted, "Let's get these two to the front. Let them through, everyone." He pushed through the crowd, clearing a path for us toward the front of the stage. As we followed in astonishment, he turned back and said, "Hey, are you okay? The front gets a bit wild, but I wanted her to have a good view. Just my selfish wish." His unexpected kindness warmed my heart. The people at the front moved aside for us without hesitation. Brianna, her eyes brimming with tears, bowed deeply in gratitude. The concert was incredible. It was intense, almost too much to keep up with, but everyone, both the fans and the rock stars on stage, was so welcoming to us, two complete concert newbies. On the way home, Brianna, still dazed with joy, murmured, "They were so cool, so kind. I even got an autograph. Do you think Ray's happy?" The band had signed the frame of his memorial photo. It would be a treasure for the rest of our lives. You were right, Dave. Everyone was so kind. I want to punch the old me who was so scared before. A violent sentiment, but I got her point. You can't judge someone's appearance or heart until you get close to them. Brianna nodded deeply at my words. I smiled. My experiences had made me more sensitive to people's emotions. And Brianna, once a tomboy, had always carried the soul of someone she wanted to protect. Everyone, in their own way, carries something. Brianna's gaze wandered to a store window. "Oh, that's cute," she said, pointing at a pink dress. "It'd suit you," I replied. On our first date, she had worn a black leather riding suit. Today, she opted for pants to match the concert vibe. But lately, Brianna had grown fond of dresses. Her desire to embrace her feminine side had been buried deep within her while she fulfilled Ray's wishes. Now it was surfacing in little ways, like decorating our apartment with adorable touches. That apartment was a reflection of Brianna's hidden dreams. And it was a warm, cheerful place. I resolved to continue honoring Ray's memory while supporting Brianna in pursuing her own dreams, as a husband who could make both possible.
Get out! Your old lady smell is ruining my new house. Michaela threw disinfectant on me as I attended her housewarming. Drenched and overwhelmed by the pungent smell, I felt something snap inside me. Standing up silently, I flashed a terrifying smile at Michaela and said, "Then I'll clean this up for you. After all, I built it." I went upstairs to Michaela's room to get something. My name is Harmony. I'm a 72-year-old retired confectioner. More precisely, a former pâtissier who ran a cake shop. I retired due to a leg injury. Now, I help my son and his wife, who have taken over the business, living a modest life. Harmony, you must be happy your son took over. At the tea parties I occasionally attend, I bring cakes made by my son and his wife, earning praise from the neighbors. Today, at the tea party, I was engrossed in fun conversations. When a neighbor mentioned my son, I stared at my tea, lost in thought. A shop with many memories, isn't it? I reminisced about the past. Indeed, my life has been full of ups and downs. I opened my pâtisserie at 35. After a decade of training in France, I had decided to open my own shop upon returning. My parents opposed, saying a cake shop in the countryside wouldn't work. I defied them, saying, "I'll do it my way," and opened my shop. It became popular in 6 months, becoming the talk of the town. My French-trained skills were praised, attracting customers quickly. My once opposed parents came to respect and fully support me. Time to think of the next new creation. Daniel, my husband, supporting our cake shop, spoke to me while preparing for the next day. Summer is tough for sales. Maybe a cold dessert would be a hit. That's what I was talking about with Daniel. That's when we heard the bell at the shop door, and I hurried to the counter. "Welcome, oh." It was Michaela, my sister-in-law, who appeared. 2 years older than me, she was always flamboyant. Having moved from the city, she dressed to stand out, enjoying the attention. Today, she wore an actress hat and sunglasses, not fitting for the countryside. Honestly, I disliked her. Her hurtful remarks and belittling of our cake shop were intolerable. Being a doctor at a university hospital, she flaunted her income and education. She only did this when my brother Kendrick wasn't around. I was deeply annoyed by her cowardice. As boring as ever. The decor's outdated, and it's dusty. Do you even clean? Michaela, worried her fancy clothes would get dirty, was her usual self. I couldn't hide my annoyance, responding curtly. "Did you come just to say that? I just stopped by on my way to my new house. Why else would I visit such a place?" While looking around, Michaela carelessly picked up a cookie and placed it roughly at the register. "I can't see this shop lasting, but I'll contribute to the sales since you're Kendrick's sister." She bought a mere $7 cookie with that attitude. Who could warmly welcome such a sister-in-law? If she weren't Kendrick's wife, I'd have her out of here immediately. As I wrapped the product, grappling with these complaints in my heart, Michaela continued her tirade. "Poor Kendrick, having such a failure for a sister. He said he gave up on his own shop because of you." Her words painfully struck my heart. Kendrick had generously helped finance my shop's construction. When I returned and found no support, only Kendrick stood by me. Later, I discovered the money he used was his own saved-up capital for starting a business. If you hadn't interfered, Kendrick might have had his own shop by now. Really pitiable. Then why don't you help him financially? Daniel appeared behind me and retorted sharply at Michaela, glaring at her. "It's between Harmony and Kendrick, and not for outsiders like us. Only Kendrick has the right to complain about Harmony. Do you even have the right to blame her?" Daniel, undaunted by Michaela, confronted her. Michaela, seemingly annoyed by Daniel's audacity, furrowed her brows and removed her sunglasses with a puzzled look. "Of course I have the right. That money was mine. You have no business interfering in this. The funds for Harmony's shop were from before Kendrick married you, right? If Kendrick has no complaints, why should you persistently blame Harmony? Harmony is my wife. Which husband would remain silent while his wife is being maligned?" Daniel shielded me from showing my tears to Michaela. I felt reassured by his presence and grateful to be his wife. Michaela, apparently not amused by Daniel's words, roughly grabbed the wrapped cookies from the counter and left without another word. After she left, we put up the closed sign, and Daniel embraced me. "You endured well. Danny, I can't do this anymore. I don't have the confidence to get along with someone like her. Even if she's Kendrick's wife, I can't bear being treated this way." "Are you not going to tell Kendrick?" "I can't. He's already looking after Mom and Dad. I can't trouble him just because I can't get along with her." Kendrick, working as a chef in a hotel, was also taking care of our parents. Despite the long commute, he managed. He had saved to open his own shop and be closer to our parents. It was with this in mind that he was saving money. Money can be earned again. I want to see you succeed as a top pâtissier. This money is an investment in your future. You'll definitely become famous. Kendrick assured me, investing $2 million in my startup. I was deeply grateful to Kendrick, and when he married Michaela, I was overjoyed. But I never expected her to be like this. I was tormented daily by what to do. Tomorrow, we're going to Kendrick's housewarming, right? Maybe you could mention it to him? If Kendrick talks to Michaela, maybe she'll stop. Tomorrow, we're invited to the housewarming party, and I'll finally see Kendrick after such a long time. Reluctantly agreeing to the words, persuaded by Daniel, I focused on closing up the shop. Lately, I couldn't bring myself to tell Kendrick about Michaela. Kendrick's happiness, while he supported Mom and Dad, was precious. Despite sacrificing his own dream of opening a shop, I couldn't burden him further with Michaela's issue. I just couldn't simply nod to Daniel's suggestion. As days passed without a decision, Daniel and I, with a shortcake in hand, visited Kendrick's new home. Harmony and Daniel, long time no see. Glad you could make it. Kendrick welcomed us right at the doorstep. Michaela was out shopping and wasn't there. I felt relieved not seeing her. Noticing this, Kendrick looked at me worriedly. What's wrong? You look pale. Is it the new house smell? No way. Just had a bit too much to drink with Danny last night. I forced a smile to reassure Kendrick. To avoid any awkward conversation, I asked to see around the new house. Kendrick shared that apart from the tidy living room, their personal items were still in boxes. We agreed not to go upstairs as per his request. Soon, our parents arrived, and we enjoyed a rare family gathering. Then, Daniel seized the opportunity to bring up yesterday's topic. Sorry to bring this up at a housewarming, but there's something about Michaela we need to discuss. Wait, Danny! I wasn't ready. Daniel's words made me panic. But he looked at me earnestly, holding my hand. Harmony, I've seen how hard you've worked, thinking about the family. Keeping your struggles to yourself seems unfair to Kendrick and the others. Struggles? Harmony, have you been having a hard time? Mom heard Daniel's words. Realizing I was hiding something, everyone looked worried. I regretted my foolish thought of just enduring it all. Actually, I've been harassed by Michaela for a long time. What? Everyone was shocked, especially Kendrick. It would be so. Understandably, knowing his wife was bullying his sister-in-law is shocking. Unable to speak, Daniel explained the situation for me. Silence followed. Only heavy air flowed there. I wondered if I should have kept quiet. That's when Kendrick, as if having made a decision, spoke to Mom. Mom, I've made up my mind. That's right. No need to hold back anymore. Huh? Daniel and I exchanged looks at the unexpected response. Dad explained the situation, leaving us speechless. Just as we were about to ask more. I'm back! It's so hot outside. Is Kendrick not here? Michaela returns home at the worst possible time. The family's spirits dampen as if sensing the charged air of her untimely arrival. I'm off then. With those words, Kendrick disappears towards the entrance, and Daniel suggests we store the cake he brought in the fridge for now. As Mom and I move to do so, we reach for the fridge door. Hey, don't you touch our stuff! Shouted at by Michaela, who just entered the living room. Mom and I jump in surprise. I'll take care of the house, just stay put, it's fine. Michaela, recalling Kendrick is around, snatches the cake from me with a creepily pleasant smile. Her words seem softened, but there's an underlying sharpness, especially as she roughly takes the cake. Mom, witnessing this, is speechless. Unable to react, she's shocked by such treatment in front of her. Feeling hurt, I urge Mom to join me on the living room sofa. Sitting next to Daniel, I try to hold back tears. Thank you all for coming to our housewarming today. If you have gifts, I'll gladly accept them. Michaela takes over as if she's the host. Her greedy words irritate both Daniel and me. Our parents, watching her closely, reluctantly present their gift to Michaela. I, not keen but following suit, hand over my gift, which Michaela snatches. What a boring gift. Typical. Michaela mutters, just loud enough for me to hear. Shocked at her audacity to complain despite receiving a gift, I feel my patience turning into anger. Then, Michaela takes out a bottle of disinfectant from a supermarket bag. Well then, let's wrap this up, she says, splashing the disinfectant on me. Drenched, I'm stunned, and my family cries out in alarm. So, I guess it's the height of the party. Just as I said that, Michaela turned towards me and splashed the disinfectant on me. I was drenched in disinfectant, completely soaked. Shocked by the sudden turn of events, I was speechless, and my family around me gasped. Hey, Michaela! What are you doing? Mom, more than anyone else, raised her voice and stood in front of Michaela to protect me, and everyone glared at Michaela. Michaela sneered at this and threw her final words at me. The smell of an older lady will dirty my new house. Get out! At that moment, something inside me snapped. Silent, I stood up with a frighteningly pleasant smile towards her. So you hate filth that much? Well, let me clean it up for you. After all, I built this place. Michaela, seeing me smile, seemed terrified and stepped back. I snatched all the presents from her, ignoring Michaela's complaints, and headed to the second floor. Conveniently, there was a plate with Michaela's name on it in front of the door, and I boldly walked inside. I picked up a cardboard box still packed and dropped it from the second floor to the first with a bang. Hey! What are you doing? Michaela tried to stop me as the boxes tumbled down one after another. But with so many boxes rolling down from the second floor, she couldn't come up and could only desperately scream in vain as I dropped the last box. Do you realize what you're doing? Michaela, showing her true colors in front of Kendrick, glared at me with a devilish face. Unconcerned about her, I went downstairs and asked Daniel with a smile. Can you hold back that noisy trash for me? We can't let the dirty germs out. The new house will get dirty with the smell of mold, right? Daniel must have been scared too. The words from my ever-smiling face were no longer treating Michaela as a human. And I was throwing all her belongings outside with apparent delight. People might think I've lost my mind. It can't be helped that you think so. Stop it, Kendrick. What are you just staring at? Stop her. Isn't your sister out of her mind? Michaela was screaming desperately. However, Kendrick did not respond. Instead, he silently watched my next move. The entrance was overflowing with Michaela's cardboard boxes, a mess, but it couldn't be helped. After throwing everything outside, I clapped my hands and walked towards Michaela for the final touch. Well, now it's just Michaela left. What do you mean? You think you can get away with this? Who knows? I can't hear the threats of trash. My smile must have been like a mask, mechanical and eerie. Michaela gasped at my creepy smile, looking at me fearfully. Without paying her any attention, I instructed Daniel to kick her out along with her slippers. Hey, stop! No! Kendrick, help me! Michaela begged Kendrick for help until she was thrown out. But Kendrick had no intention of listening to her. At this point, I understood what Kendrick and the others meant. There's not a single person on your side here. Get out if you understand. This is my house, after all. What? What are you talking? Before Michaela could finish, Daniel dragged her out, pushing her outside the entrance. Daniel, who managed to kick Michaela out, immediately closed the door and, very thoroughly, double-locked and even chained it. Michaela, now completely unable to enter, was left outside in the summer heat. She banged on the door and screamed for about 10 minutes, but her strength seemed to wane gradually. To make matters worse, neighbors came by and started whispering about her shabby appearance. Mommy, look! That lady is outside in her slippers. Hey, don't do that. Don't point. Even passing children mocked Michaela. For her, so full of pride, this public humiliation was hell. She crammed all her belongings into her car and fled the scene that day. Seeing this, I regained my composure and hastily turned to Kendrick. What should we do? Kendrick, I'm sorry. That was... It's okay, I know the situation. Besides, we should be the ones apologizing. Kendrick suggested going back to the living room, and Mom had prepared tea and cake. I borrowed clothes from Kendrick and quickly changed to avoid catching a cold. After changing, I sat on the living room sofa, and Kendrick explained why he had been silent all this time. That woman, she was actually harassing Mom in the same way. What? Shocked by this sudden revelation, Daniel and I looked at Mom in surprise. It all happened when I wasn't around. Mom told me yesterday. She was constantly harassed and mocked by her, even made fun of you. It was really terrible. Michaela had been bad-mouthing me every time we met, suggesting that my poor upbringing was due to Mom's bad parenting, and if the parents had more money, Kendrick wouldn't have had to struggle. That's what Mom confessed to Kendrick yesterday. Then he said that since you built the house, we should explain the situation to you and your family before deciding what to do next. And that's what led to today. Michaela, who even tormented Mom, could never be forgiven. Trembling with anger, I clenched my fists so tightly that my nails dug into my palms. Seeing this, Daniel gently placed his hand over mine. Harmony, I know how much you care about family. Maybe you don't have to endure this anymore? Danny. After hearing all this, I definitely can't go on with her either. Resolved by Kendrick's determination, I also steeled myself to teach that woman a lesson. We pledged to act and did so immediately. The next day, my phone was flooded with a storm of calls from Michaela. Kendrick, Daniel, and I decided to meet her alone. What do you mean by this? Kicking me out of the house? You won't get away with what you did. We agreed to meet at my office, and as soon as she entered, her shrill voice echoed. Wearing the same clothes as yesterday, with dark circles under her eyes from lack of sleep, Michaela arrived looking miserable. Her loud voice was irritating, but I didn't let it show. Instead, I smiled sweetly, further infuriating her with my words. I cleaned up because you said the new house gets dirty, right? What? I don't want someone as ugly as you in the house. The new house will get dirty with germs, right? Saying so, I put my index finger to my lips, feigning cuteness. As unsuitable as it felt for me, it seemed to affect Michaela. Her face turned red as a boiled lobster, showing her anger. Who's ugly? I'm far more beautiful than a third-rate woman like you. To say that with the same clothes as yesterday and such a dirty face, impressive. Whose fault do you think it is that I ended up like this? A woman like you acting all high and mighty. Doubling down on my previous provocations, I taunted Michaela, which angered her enough to come at me. Daniel stood protectively in front of me, and Kendrick, usually mild-mannered, showed his anger for the first time. Enough. You're in no position to talk down to Harmony and her family. What? Why should I be the one getting scolded? The bad one is clearly that woman. Michaela remained defiant, even against Kendrick's words. She must have looked down on Kendrick as well, deep down. She was after money. Thinking Kendrick had money and blaming me for losing it, she must have despised me. Despite having her own earnings, her greed showed what a despicable woman she was. As I glared at her with utter contempt, Kendrick slammed a piece of paper in front of her. I have no intention of going on with someone who can't even value my family. We're getting a divorce. The paper Kendrick presented was a divorce petition, already signed by him and his father as a guarantor. Seeing this, Michaela suddenly regained her composure and clung to Kendrick in panic. Wait! A divorce? Just wait! I don't want to hear what you have to say. My mind is made up, and if you refuse the divorce, I'll go to court if I have to. Where do you think the money for that will come from? You don't have the financial power, so don't talk big. I'll support financially, so don't worry. Michaela initially tried to act humble, but Kendrick's words revealed her true nature again. Now that we had proof of her looking down on Kendrick financially, we could crush her without remorse. Smiling, I intervened between them. I noticed that Michaela seems to be trying to explain what she's talking about, so I say something more. Didn't you know? Besides this store, I have several others. I have enough financial power to fight you. Michaela gasped in surprise at my words. Previously, a TV show had featured one of my regular customers praising my shop. The reporter raved about its beauty and deliciousness, leading to its popularity. Requests for more stores came flooding in, and now I have a nationwide chain. Kendrick was the only one who supported the opening of my shop. As a thank you, I gifted him that house. I had also heard about you planning to open a clinic nearby and thought you'd need money. Michaela's face turned pale upon hearing the whole situation. She must have realized she had picked a fight with the wrong person. She was speechless. Since I still hold the property rights, I am the owner of that house. I can sue you for trespassing. What will you do? Will you fight? With a smile, I cornered Michaela, who seemingly gave in and began to profusely apologize. Even though Michaela continued to apologize, our family had no intention of forgiving her, and we kicked her out of the store. Kendrick and Michaela eventually went to court for a divorce. Given everything that had happened, our lawyer assured us the divorce would be granted. Our family savored this joy. During the time she was kicked out, Michaela's face became well known in the neighborhood, and no one was sympathetic towards her. Her clinic had no patients and closed within 3 months. She shamefully fled to the city. Thus, our family found peace. I continued managing my shops, and Kendrick finally opened his own. Kendrick, Dad, and Mom started living in the new house, which we remodeled for accessibility. Harmony, what happened? You suddenly went quiet. I was reminiscing during a tea party with everyone. Snapped back to reality by a neighbor, I responded. Sorry, it's nothing. I'm just really grateful to those kids. Thanks to them, I'm now enjoying a peaceful retirement with my husband. As we enjoyed the cake, I reflected on how these nearly 40 years were the stepping stones to my current happiness.